Good morning, this is Irene with BrainStormAcres. And we're going to let you in on a little secret. We have plans. Now, last year we grew beets, carrots, and spinach in our greenhouse during the winter. We were definitely happy with the results that we got. We got lots of radishes, we got a decent crop of spinach most of the winter, we've got all kinds of fun things with really pretty minimal work. It wasn't a complete success because we had actually tried some tomatoes and our heater failed, and that took care of that. We've decided that this year we're going to try a whole bunch more. And you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we've been watching people in the UK, and they have all sorts of hoop houses and stuff very commonly at the various allotments and things that they have. Now, I know that their climate is not as extreme as ours for most of those. I mean, there are places in Scotland and places like that that have some pretty extreme climates. But a lot of the YouTube people are actually down south somewhere in the UK. And their climate doesn't tend to be quite as extreme as ours. We decided we're going to give it a go anyway. We're going to focus mostly on things like cabbages and pak choi and stuff like that that are naturally temperature tolerant. We're still in September now, so we have some time left before our first potential frost date. Now, one thing we've seen from year to year here is that our first frost date varies hugely. And what we figured out is if we can make it through the second week of October, we can often make it very close to the end of November, even out in the regular garden. So what we're going to do this year is experiment. We have seeds left over from this year. We intend to replace them anyway pretty much next year. And we hate to waste them. So we're going to play with a few different plants. The first thing this morning is I am going to pop these guys up. These are seedlings that I originally started in the house because just a couple of weeks ago, it was like 120 in here most of the day, and that's just too much. So I'm gonna pop these up. I've also got some other plants that I started, other seeds rather, that I started in bigger pots to start with the other day because, you know, several years ago we were down in the Phoenix area visiting somebody that my husband had met online. The guy was doing aquaponics, and at the time we were considering aquaponics. Well, aquaponics in Arizona is a real challenge because, to be honest, there's not many fish that can tolerate the heat in a greenhouse in the summertime. And what he was growing was tilapia. He actually picked up some tilapia from one of the rivers and was using those. And they were working pretty darn well for him. Now, I have to confess, and I know this is not a popular thing these days, I am not a fan of tilapia. I grew up eating a firmer, more flavorful fish than tilapia, and tilapia I view as being a blank slate when you go to cook it. It's almost a flavorless fish, so you can add any other flavor you want to it, which is great if that's what your goal is. But we decided that's not what we were going to do in the long run. We would just go with hydroponics instead and regular garden soil. But I remembered, we were talking about this the other day, Henry and I were talking about his greenhouse, and he had a very makeshift greenhouse. It was nothing fancy, it was all homemade, just like ours is. And he didn't have a lot of superb high-end equipment. It was mostly scavenged stuff that he'd stuck together himself. And he was making it work. But he had a lot of plants in his greenhouse that were not labeled as being for greenhouse growing. So we said, well, what the heck? Nobody ever talked about growing radishes in greenhouses, and we had no trouble growing radishes in here. We have seen at Epcot in Disney World in Florida They grow all kinds of stuff in the greenhouses there, lots of lettuce and things like that. And obviously that's a fairly common procedure these days. There's some wonderful YouTube channels that grow lettuce in hydroponic situations. Spring Hill is one of them that comes to mind. Fenster Farm is another. But be that as it may, we were not going to set up an elaborate system. We have a simple Dutch bucket system, which is able to be expanded. In a previous video, we showed Henry updating the solutions. And let me show you what's happened since he updated the solution. So we weren't really sure if any of these tomatoes would make it when we first saw them. I am pleased to report that not only have some of them survived, but some of them are growing new stuff. This one is toast. There's no doubt in my mind about it. Granadero did not make it. Pisano has grown new greens at the top, and I can see it starting to develop a few little flower buds in there. Amanda Orange, which looked really iffy, has now suddenly grown some new sprouts on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the existing plant, which is basically a stick with a few leaves on top, until these grow bigger, and then I'm chopping the rest of it off. Kellogg's Breakfast is sending up an entirely new plant off the roots here. And it's also sprouting new leaves here. So I'm going to watch to see what it does here. I can see a bunch of growth starting on various buds here. But my intention is basically the same for this one. I'm going to tape the sort of burned out top that we have left here and take it off once this bottom stuff does well enough. Better Boy pretty much disintegrated to nothing, and I had like this leaf left of it just here, and I trimmed it back to try and see if I could keep that leaf going. Well, since Henry fertilized everything again, we've got a whole new section of plant coming out, and once it's big enough, I'm going to train that up. Black cherry, it's toast. It is definitely toast. I need to turn the fan off. Woo. There we go. This Pisano, excuse me, has come back beautifully. It's got a bunch of flowers on it. Now we just need to see if it'll set fruit. But we have great hopes. So we know we need to replace the plant in here and the plant in here, but all the other ones are going to make it, it looks like. So we've got to replace 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plants. The plan then is we have 4 tomato starts in the house right now that are from cuttings in the garden. And I'm going to be watching, now that the garden is doing a bit better, I'm going to be watching to see if I can take some more starts. We also started some cucumbers in the house. There's nothing wrong with these leaves. They were damaged because they got stuck to the plastic dome that they were on and they got burned. But the rest of them is fine. There's no bugs, there's no anything bad with them. And you can see they've got true leaves, they're starting to vine. So my goal with these is to pot them up. We haven't decided completely whether we're going to pot some of them up into hydroponics or whether we're just going to put them in dirt. These pots here are an assortment. Black-seeded Simpson, that is lettuce. Genovese, that's basil. These are all tomatoes. We decided to actually experiment with starting a few new tomato seeds and seeing what would happen. Because the worst thing that could happen is they'll die. This is a zucchini. This is a yellow squash. This is a zucchini, and you can see it's already coming up. This is also a zucchini. These are beans, and so are these. They're pole beans. What we remembered from that greenhouse was that he had rigged up a bunch of pole beans in his greenhouse, and they were just crawling all over the place, and he was getting, oh, he's not going to get commercial quantities, but he was getting enough for a family off of those green beans. So we decided that our pole beans that didn't do well in the garden this year, which we have replanted and they are coming back, we still decided we'd try it in here just to see what would happen, because the red noodle and the Gita are both long beans used in Chinese cooking, Oriental cooking in general, actually. And we said, well, those are designed for hot environments. Vortex is a more general purpose in the garden sort of a bean. Let's try them. If we get a moderate fall, which we're currently forecast to get, we're currently forecast to be 5 degrees, maybe 10 degrees warmer than usual, and so far we're still roasting. You would think it was July here. Today is a cool day, but we're supposed to go back up again after a couple of days. It's a little dip in the jet stream right now that's making us cool down a little bit, so it's only hitting the high 70s, low 80s during the day. It never got real cold last night, which was it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be in the low 50s, and it made it down to about 66. So we're getting some really weird weather. This time of year, we should still be fairly warm during the day, but actually not as warm as we have been. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it a try. We hope that you find this whole process interesting, and we hope you'll come follow along with us. This is a big, giant experiment. Most of 2019 has been a huge experiment. And we have all kinds of things we plan to do this winter. We've decided that we can at least grow the carrots and the spinach and the radishes in here successfully most of the winter. There'll be times when they sort of stall out. Come with us and see what happens. If we succeed, awesome. If we don't completely succeed, we'll probably learn something. The 2019 has been a huge learning experience. And we enjoy sharing that with you guys because maybe you can learn from our experiences and avoid a few of the mistakes we make. Or maybe we'll give you an idea of some modification you can make to work in your circumstances. Stay tuned and we'll see what happens. See you next time. Bye. We were